Howdy gamers. Let's talk about the runes for Malphite top lane and I suppose mid lane, but his most dominant role is the top lane and the runes really don't change for him that much mid lane if you're playing him into the similar matchups, which in the top lane you're going to be playing mostly against melee champions, and these melee champions really do just beat Malphite early, but the way Malphite can get away or get through that is through maxing his Q and then running Arcane Comet. That's a very dominant option that you have, as it makes it so that you can just simply win lane through pressing Q like off cooldown on them. You also have the option to run a keystone like Grasp, but with something like Grasp, Malphite doesn't make as good use of it as other champions. You would end up in the resolve tree with something like this, and these basically give you two trading tools in Bone Plating and Grasp. Shield Bash works on Malphite, but isn't as good as on other champions who create shields for themselves with abilities versus a passive shield that comes up. It's basically like Rakan using Shield Bash or Galio. Like, it comes up every now and then, but you really don't get huge values out of it. And the bonus armor and magic resist offered by it just doesn't do anything, especially for a champion like Malphite. You should be looking to scale your tankiness with your itemization versus what you can get in runes, because what you can get in runes for Malphite doesn't add a lot. With Grasping and Undying, every 4 seconds you're in combat, your next auto will deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health, heal you for 2, and then permanently increase your health by 5. So with this trading tool, if you're playing into any of the modern melee champions like Ornn, Mordekaiser, Irelia, like, those champions like will just have better trades against you. But the Grasp like kind of supplements worse play in that sense, but it doesn't amplify anything that Malphite's good at. With Bone Plating, it's kind of the same deal. You already have a shield, so a shield that builds up after not taking damage over time. So like, you effectively have Bone Plating in your kit. Second Wind is also losing value because you have that shield. So Malphite's in a really weird position with these resolve runes compared to other champions. So the keystone that I'm going to be recommending is Arcane Comet. Arcane Comet, whenever you damage an enemy champion with an ability, it hurls a comet at their target direction. So it's basically like an AoE ability, but the comet needs to land for it to deal damage. But luckily with Malphite's Q, it's a slow, so that the comet is guaranteed to land. The damage from Arcane Comet scales with your level and then also with your bonus AD or AP, but the scaling from the AD or AP doesn't really matter for Malphite. This just adds basically just more damage to your Q, and is up almost every single time that you can cast it. And even if it's not up like as your Q would come up, in the top lane, since it's like a slower lane, maybe like most of the time, it wouldn't have to be up at the exact time that it's up. It's not that paramount, but when it is, then you're going to get more damage. The cooldown reduction of Arcane Comet is also reduced for every single time you land another ability. So if you Q and then full combo someone, and then do this, then on the second rotation of your Q, you might have an Arcane Comet up again, therefore just giving you more damage. In a team fight, whenever you ult, it's going to proc Arcane Comet, and then since Arcane Comet's AoE, it's going to be damaging everyone around you. So it has that synergy as well, versus the other damage runes, similar to Grasp, where Grasp is single target, and where, I don't know, anything in the precision tree or something would just be single target as well. So Arcane Comet is very, very useful in the early game and in the late game. The mid game is where it would fall off, but that's when your itemization takes over as Malphite anyways. You're looking to scale with this champion, and usually, like, you're supposed to be weaker in the early game, but with Arcane Comet, you're just not. Like, you kind of win lanes so long that you're not taking terrible trades and just constantly spamming the Q on them. And it's really as simple as that. So Arcane Comet does give you a lot of value. For the second runes here, you have good options in Nullifying Orb and Mana Flow Ban. You want to be taking Mana Flow Ban most of the time. Nullifying Orb, whenever you take magic damage that would reduce you below 30% health, you gain a shield that absorbs 40 to 120 magic damage, which is based off your level, for 4 seconds, and then it's only on a 1 minute cooldown. So if you're into AP matchups, especially if the enemy has multiple AP champions, so let's say you're against Mordekaiser top, Karthus jungle, and like Orianna mid, like, of course, take Nullifying Orb. It's a lot of free magic resist, and with Malphite specifically, Malphite doesn't like to build magic resist. He doesn't have good options for it. Like, Merc Treads are low value for him. Adaptive Helm is okay, but like, it's really expensive, and you'd rather be building other items. So having this magic damage shield, and a way to combat those that damage type of champion in the runes is really, really strong. Like, especially if you're against Karthus, man. Like, you got to run it. And especially if you're against champions like Mordekaiser and whatnot, because they're going to be taking your stats, and then if you're surviving them, especially early, then you're winning. But the more common option is going to be Monoflow Ban. With Monoflow Ban, hitting an enemy champion with an ability permanently increases your maximum mana by 25 up to 250. So this effectively gives you Sapphire Crystal for free, which is also really solid because building mana on Malphite is kind of expensive. And then it rewards you for doing what you already want to do with the rune page, and then also with Malphite top lane early game, which is spam your Q, effectively like off cooldown. And then once you reach the 250 bonus mana, you restore 1% of your missing every 5. So basically becomes almost impossible to run out of mana in the laning phase, in combination with Corrupting Potion and maybe a Doran's Ring that you would get early, which is a solid build. Like, if you're really trying to play Malphite, like, push in the first 3 waves, use your Corrupting Potion stacks, take the damage, push in the first 3 waves, and then recall, get a Doran's Ring. You're now in lane with the Doran's Ring and Corrupting Potion and Arcane Comet. Enemy's really doomed from there. Alrighty, for the third rune, it's going to be Transcendence. The only other option in this row that would be viable would be Absolute Focus. Absolute Focus isn't as good because with Transcendence, it's offering you cooldown reduction. Absolute Focus is offering you ability power per level. And with that, like, you just don't make great use out of the ability power. Like, yes, Malphite has ratios, but it's more important to have cooldown reduction because you're going to be getting more damage off by casting your abilities multiple times versus having more damage on them through the ability power. With Absolute Focus, you also have to be above 70% HP for the ability power bonus, so it's harder to pull off in that sense too. And yes, you would have the ability power earlier from Absolute Focus because with Transcendence you have to be level 10 to get the 10% cooldown reduction from it, but there's just no point. Like, having 2 extra damage on your Q or something, what's the deal, man? With Transcendence, once you reach level 10, you gain 10% cooldown reduction, and all excess cooldown reduction is converted into AD or AP. So it gives you an extra scaling option. It's really nice mid game. No matter what you're building, you're either going to end up with 20 or 30% CDR usually, and that cooldown reduction goes a long way with Malphite because if you're on cooldown, you're effectively not a champion. So it works really, really well with him, especially getting multiple rotation of your abilities off in a fight. People are going to be like, what? Like, because usually it's just Malphite ults and dumps everything, and then he's not a champion, just this big minion. But when your abilities are actually up again, that's when you really start having impact. And even just in the confines of the laning phase, you're going to get to level 10 really quickly in the top lane. So even if it's just for 1v1s or 2v2s, having more abilities up more often is just way, way, way valuable, especially as a tank, and especially as a like an offensive tank like Malphite. Pretty similar to Cho'Gath, where yeah, you can build tank, but where you can run things like this, you get way more value out of it. With Scorch, your next damaging ability hit sets champions on fire, dealing bonus magic damage based off your level, and then this is only on a 10-second cooldown too. So Scorch in combination with Arcane Comet gives you more poke on your Q, and then through the more poke in the Q, you create a safer laning phase for yourself, or you create a more dominant lane for yourself as against weaker champions, you're going to be just winning the lane, and then against stronger champions, if you chunk them to even like 80% health, you put the lane state in a lot safer of a position for you, as it's harder for the enemy to dive you, and it's easier for your jungler to gank. And even if you're not winning lane levels 1 to 5 as Malphite, that's completely fine. So long that you're not dying, you are scaling, and that's the whole purpose of the champion. So again, you have the poke with Arcane Comet Scorch, and then you have the scaling with Monoflow Ban and Transcendence. So really solid rune combination, and to get value out of anything else in your primary tree is really hard for Malphite. For the secondary runes, you do have options in Resolve, in like Bone Plating Overgrowth. You have options in Inspiration with Biscuits and Cosmic Insight. But I think your best options are in Domination with Cheap Shot and Ultimate Hunter. Going back to Resolve, again, since you're playing Malphite in this way, like, you're really losing a ton of value in the trading tools that Resolve offers. You're trying to subvert the laning phase through all in your poke, and then basically like ignoring the enemy champion after your Q is down, and then letting the wave come into you, because even if you try to contest the wave, it's going to be a loss as you've spent your poke on them and everything else is on cooldown. So with bone plating overheal, bone plating is going to help you into melee champions, and then overheal is going to give you health per level, but Malphite doesn't need that. Other champions make better use of this health, and then with bone plating, you get more effective health, but since Malphite has his shield anyways, they're going to be getting through the bone plating and then getting through the shield, but you're really losing out on extra damage from cheap shot and then the cooldown reduction from the ult for effectively like not even a good laning tool, because it's not the way that Malphite wants to play out the laning phase. He wants to poke the enemy and then just run away and wait for the wave, and that's really it. With inspiration, it's kind of the same deal. These just don't outweigh cheap shot, because cheap shot is adding so much more damage to what Malphite's kit does. With cheap shot, damaging a champion with impaired movement or actions deals 10 to 45 true damage based on your level, and then it's only on a 4-second cooldown. So cheap shot in combination with your Q, E, and ult is going to be dealing more damage so long that you follow up with the damage. So you effectively have a better defensive tool in cheap shot than you would with bone plating, because you're dealing more damage to the enemy when they dive onto you. Because if you're dealing more damage to them, it's more potent than being able to take more damage as Malphite, because like taking more damage isn't as profitable because you don't have like these ambient damage sources like other tanks do. You also don't have like as short of cooldowns like they do. So like taking damage for Ornn would be more valuable than it would be for Malphite. Like if Ornn was to run this exact rune page, it just wouldn't work out. But with Malphite, it does, because of how his stats are and then how his abilities are. So spending your shield, your passive shield versus a bone plating shield, to get like a Q1 auto or a Q or an E1 auto is going to let you proc cheap shot. And if, let's say ideally, you Q the enemy and then you auto them, they start attacking you, and then you start kiting. 4 seconds goes by, and then you E, and then you auto them. That's 2 cheap shot procs. It's a lot of true damage, and it really does fucking add up really quickly. Come mid to late game, cheap shot's also going to be proccing on every single target that you hit with the ult, and your E, and your Q. So it's really, really easy to accumulate this damage. And then Ultimate Hunter is kind of a no-brainer for Malphite. Malphite's ult is on a pretty significant cooldown. And even though you don't get huge values out of Ultimate Hunter, having it up, especially where you're playing Malphite in this way, where you have these runes to where you can actually kill your lane opponent, having it where you can solo kill your lane opponent with the ult, and then have the ult up for the next team fight around an objective is really, really useful, especially in the confines of solo queue. Like, you're not going to be wildly punished for having the ult down, but then having it up more often just gives you more opportunities. Pretty similar to the mindset behind Arcane Comet and Scorch, just giving you more damage. So these would be the default runes I'd recommend for Malphite. For the shards, you have options of ability power and armor. But with this, I think running ability power is completely fine. Depending on your lane matchup, like really consider it. If you're playing into mixed damage, you could even go like armor and magic resist. So against champions like Kayle, Ornn, Kali, etc. But when you can, try to run the double adaptive force, as that's going to be giving you ability power once you build it. And then also, depending on your matchup, you want to change the resistance. So if you're playing into an AD matchup, obviously you want the armor. And then if you're playing into an AP matchup, champions like Mordekaiser, Rumble in the top lane, you want the magic resist. So yeah, that's that. With these runes for mid lane would be about the exact same thing. I suppose you could switch it to Electrocute with mid lane, as you'd only be looking to all in versus trading, but it's you're really just a gimped version of like Fizz at that point. So I think in mid lane it would be about the exact same thing, where you're looking to have this trading tool, and yeah, but it just doesn't work out mid lane as well. So I just don't play in mid lane. Going back to the other runes, again with Grasp, I don't think like having these defensive tools is as valuable as having extra damage, because again, if Malphite's not dealing damage, he's not as useful, and he doesn't have the ambient damage sources as other tanks do to really make sense of the extra healing slash stats slash effective HP and bonus HP later that you get from a rune page such as this. So it might not be bad in like tank versus tank matchups, but then nothing is bad in those matchups. In a tank versus tank matchup, you might as well take something like this, where you can have extra summoner spells, and then yeah, that's basically it. because with the extra summoner spells, you're going to be getting more damage slash more tankiness than you would be through the runes. So that's really it with Malphite runes. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. And if you're interested in watching me talk or play League of Legends, you can check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SawyearNelson. You know, whenever I started playing League about 6 years ago or so, people told me lock in Malphite, he's easy, and like I would miss every single CS. It was fucking ridiculous. Like I came from like Renekton and Nasus to Malphite. I would be like 20 CS at 10 minutes. It was a joke. So yeah, don't talk to me about that. Bye bye.